Travis Wingate Zell. Alright, it looks like Farms is trying to go on the defensive as John DeLynn had interviewed Dr. Rittner on the Book of Abraham, and so they interviewed John Gee. And if you haven't watched Dr. Rittner's interview, he totally thrashes Gee. And so Gee is looking old. Might as well put him out to pasture. There's a big difference. Dr. Rittner, even if you've seen my commentaries on his videos on how he, as a doctor of Egyptology, doesn't know Egyptology as well as he claims he does, as he's made blatant mistakes that only rookies would make. Nonetheless, Gee's response, his approach is linguistic scientific, whereas Gee is not scientific whatsoever. It's all faith promoting, how we can get Mormons to feel good about the authenticity of the Book of Abraham. I still don't see Abraham as a Hebrew word in the Egyptian text. That's the whole claim. That's why I can't understand Rittner's position. They're totally beaten up on the church over we can't find a Hebrew word in an Egyptian text. Sorry, Mormons. No, duh. So anyway, I'm not going to go over a commentary of his video because he's just full of it. And I'm definitely not going over BML, BMG, whatever this Book of Mormon thing and historical evidence. There is no historical evidence for the... Yeah, it says Book of Mormon, isn't it? No, Book of Abraham. Historicity. Oh, the Book of Mormon, or Book of Abraham, comes from Egyptian papyri, and the papyri is real, and therefore it's the Book of Abraham. Dum 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 dum. Are Mormons really that stupid? Seriously? Are you really that stupid that you can't catch on that the church apologists are deceiving you by not using science? So let me do the work for you, apologists, as you have failed the church and you have failed the members of the church and you couldn't do it. So let me, as I have already put in my porn pic, as I will, and then we'll go over the porn in the Book of Abraham. Okay, so this is an Egyptological reconstruction, as you can tell by the addition of the bird rather than his arms both being up. This is how I was able to identify this document as having been found or written originally in Com Ombo, is because of the addition of the hawk or the falcon, either way. And so, yeah, Egyptologists aren't going to tell you this. They're just going to tell you, oh, well, there's supposed to be a hawk there, and it's supposed to be Anubis's head, and blah, blah, blah. But they won't tell you any of this other stuff of where the document or the papyri came from, because they don't know. They don't know how to investigate. They only know how to translate, according to the Rosetta Stone, which is in the learning of the Greeks, the language of the Egyptians. And that's where they go wrong. And so Joseph Smith was using this as his source for translation of Abraham chapter 1. That's what we're talking about here, Abraham chapter 1. And so there's a lot of things that he puts in there, but it's going off of his understanding of Egyptian, as a video that I saw today on YouTube is redoing what I've already known, is that the Freemason Bible has Egyptian in it, and it would correspond with the Yorkites specifically, because the Yorkites have the Knights Templar. And if you know anything about the Knights Templar, they went and dug in Jerusalem under the temple, found something, went to the Pope. Pope knighted them as Knights Templar, and they got rich and from escorting pilgrims to the temple, until a future pope said, I don't like this wealth that you guys have and the power you have over my authority and power, and I don't like it that you're pursuing these Egyptian gods and Egyptian documents until Friday the 13th. So yeah, they come into America, and then bury the plates in the caves in southern Illinois, where X marks the spot for the 2 total solar eclipses over the United States, which was their plan to build New Jerusalem in America. And so Joseph finds buried treasure plates in Egyptian, calls it the Book of Mormon. You get the point. They were Yorkites Masons. So, besides all that interruption, they translated according to the facsimiles, and I've gone over this with you, so I'm not going over it again here. I'm just going to do a quick summary explanation for you on how it was done, and how Egyptologists are wrong, and how Mormon apologists are wrong. So I'm the one who's saving the church and doesn't deserve to be saved. I'm saving Joseph Smith's reputation. And so here, as I've talked about, the Bible stories all came from the Egyptian text. So you can look at this, you see a man standing over him, and he's doing the afterlife preparation, and yes, he has a knife. Eva Vasilevska, Anthropology of Religion at the University of Utah, did a whole class on mummification. Yes, you do the little wire thing up the nose, and you scramble the brains and yank them out. But you also have to take out the internal organs. And Egyptologists, how are they doing that? See those canoptic jars? For the 4 organs in the body. They get a knife and cut the chest and pull them out and stick them in the jars. You know this. And so Joseph Smith putting a knife in his hand, so what? That's part of it. Just because other pictures don't show the knife, that doesn't disqualify Joseph from adding a knife and telling a story about a knife and killing. And so he calls it an altar, but it's a bed or a table. That's where they do the mummification. And so if you were to look at this, you see a man who's sacrificing to carry on into the other world a person on the table. And if you put all of the pictures in connection, especially facsimile number 3, Egyptologists, and especially as they know the names of the books, Book of Breathings, and a version of the Coming Forth by Day, they should know these things, and they won't tell you because they don't know. They're not putting their knowledge to use. They only translate. They don't know how to research their own field of study. And to translate accurately, you have to do the research of the Egyptian documents. You can't just say, oh, I can translate it. Yeah, this is what it says. That's not enough. You have to be able to research. Combine all the documents together, look for patterns, look for similar storylines and connections, and you have to apply them to other textual materials to see if there's connections and links. You know, they do it with Greek and Roman. They say, well, Jupiter and the Roman version are this. I can't remember if they're the Roman version, or is it? No, Jupiter is the Roman version. That's why it's messing me up. Zeus and Jupiter, one and the same. Okay. And that's how they do it, is they see the comparisons. Yes, Zeus is a completely different deity than Jupiter. They have different stories and stuff, but they're comparable. And so you got to do that with the Egyptians as well. D.M. Murdoch was pretty good at doing that kind of thing, and she was an Egyptologist who was into doing the research behind the translation. And that's why she was able to come out with these revelatory claims. She just couldn't put them into a theory context, and then she died prematurely in life. And so, yes, Abraham sacrificing Isaac, as you've got a little messenger coming down, and so what happens in the text? Abraham being sacrificed by a wicked priest, and a messenger comes and says, stop. But there's also someone else. And if you pay close attention to the text, you catch him. It's the angel of the Lord and the Lord's presence, I believe it's called. Two different things. And it has to do with facsimile number 3, but we'll get to that. But yeah, Abraham chapter 1, Joseph looking at this facsimile and taking the Book of Mormon process of translation, which is exactly the same way, and I've gone over that with you guys. And so yes, he has decided to tell part of the Book of Mormon, or the Bible story in Genesis, to fill in the gaps and help explain the missing parts of the Bible that are obvious. And so he throws in an Egyptian connection. It says that Abraham is from Egypt, figure number 10, not from Babylon, and tells the story in this way. And he doesn't finish the translation. He doesn't get to translate or facsimile number 3, but we'll get to that in a moment here. And so then Abraham chapter 2, he then joins his addition to the Bible in the context. So chapter 2 comes directly from the Bible with some slight modifications, like he did with the Joseph Smith revision. Now we have the version that was in the Times and Seasons, and then we have the Egyptological reconstruction for facsimile number 2, which is the hypocephalus, singular, under the head. That's where it was placed, under the head of the mummy in the coffin. And so there's a whole volumes of books to explain this. For Egyptologists to do a simple, minute book translation, yeah, I can sort of show you. As you can see, I've done some packing, but these two books right here are by Michael Rhodes. Those are his translations of the facsimile. You see how thin they are in comparison with the calendar of the Egyptians for each year currently, 2014 to 2019, or 20, I think. Maybe 19. Have to check. But yeah, Egyptologists are not doing a full translation. They don't know. They're not doing the investigation necessary into all of Egyptian culture and how that translates into the language. There are levels of translation that I've gone over. But yeah, facsimile number 2 is the rest of the book of Abraham, with chapter 3 to 5, which covers space, the final frontier. These are the voyages. So yes, this is where we get Kolob from. This is why he says the Kolob is in the center, or nearest to the throne of God in the center. And Obelish, as he says, is the top, where the hat on his head starts the text going around. Going around. Because I see me going this way when I should be going this way, but it's actually going this way because, and so there are a number of male organs on this page, and more is shown with the Egyptological version, as the serpent rather than the dove also has one. That is communication. They taught their language as they also taught at the same time sex ed. And they weren't shy about it. They taught boys the women's bodies as well as the men's bodies, and the women, they taught the women's bodies as well as the men's bodies. They taught how the process worked for sex. They weren't ashamed. They taught their kids so that they would know. And we just don't do it because we're ashamed. Oh, it's taboo. We can't talk about it. Sex is a 4-letter word. S-E-X. 4 letters. S-C-4? Dum. And so, yes, a circle represented the sun, as in the pyramid text directly calls it out as the sun. But it also refers to it as the eye of God, the eye of Horus. You'll also notice it's dilated because the outer rim is thin, so the center ring is dilated. The pupil is dilated. So it's an eclipse. Egyptologists have never talked to you about that being an eclipse. They say, oh, it's a dilated pupil. Specifically, that was Guy's father, who did a paper that he submitted to the church, and the church was working on the commentary for the Book of Abraham, and they were hoping that he could provide some material for them to use, and no, it was above their head. He made it too complicated for them. But I remember him specifically saying, oh, it's a dilated pupil, but nowhere did he say it's a total solar eclipse. And if you remember your Gods of Egypt movie, Horus is blinded. Total solar eclipse. Lunar eclipse as well. Left and right eyes. And so Samson, blinded as he's chained to the Philistine temple, Broussard. Temple, not building, temple. The heathen temple, Broussard. This is significant because of him killing a lion, and in the carcass of the lion was a beehive. Where is the Latter-day Temple, which that is a symbol of the Latter Days? Where is this temple with a lion house for a wedding feast and a beehive house next to it? Which is heathen with the inverted pentagram of Lucifer. Exactly. Joseph Smith, he knew what he was doing. He understood the Freemasons of the York Rites and the Egyptian passed down through the Knights Templar, and this was the manner of translating the Bible. This is how they made it, and used the Egyptian glyphs themselves. And so Joseph, knowing this process, rendered his heliocentric. Is it heliocentric? Or anyway. It's circle within circle. That's how he did it. And the earth is a part of that. And I don't understand why Egyptologists haven't caught on to this, because they don't do the research. They just learn how to translate. So that's why it's important for Egyptologists not to just learn how to translate. They need to take anthropology. And if Eva Vasilevska is still teaching, which I'm concerned she may not be because of her health, but I highly recommend her. She's been the only female archaeologist and the only American archaeologist to be allowed in Saddam Hussein's Iraq. And she's the one who discovered, I think that is her book. Yep. This was one of my textbooks for one of her classes. And she's the one who made the discovery that Yah has a male phallus as well, as he's the brother of Baal, and I'm not finding it. I don't want to take too long flipping through trying to find it. If she's waiting till the end of the book, probably, to spring it on us. So I'm going further and further into the book. Oh, there it is. Halfway in between. Okay. So there's Yah and Baal, brothers, and yes, they're not erect, but they're well endowed. So yes, lots of porn today in this video. Just the undesirable porn of the heathen, offensive male body. And so, yeah. Facsimile number 2 was chapter 3 to the creation story to 5. And thus, the creation story was distinguished as it's part of the biblical text, but he adds the gods with a council in heaven. And the Egyptians have that too, which kind of makes me wonder if he had access to that on papyri that didn't survive the Chicago fire or didn't make it to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in whatever transfer that took place to get it there. But yeah, they're mostly identified in the Amduat. No, that's buried halfway down. So I can't pull that out for you. But Hatshepsut refers to the Amduat in premortality, saying that they prophesied that she would need to be the Pharaoh of Egypt. So let's get to facsimile number 3. Alright, Joseph Smith makes some errors here. He switches Ma'at and Horus around. Horus is the prince. He's the son of the king, who is Osiris. And he's the one that's being presented through his temple rituals, typically for the afterlife, but he's replacing his father. And so this is a transition of kingship, as Joseph Smith tells the story, as Abraham was once sacrificed, so too he had to sacrifice Isaac, but then the messenger saved him, similar story. But here you have Joseph saying Abraham is sitting on the throne as Osiris, the Pharaoh of Egypt. But he says that the actual Pharaoh is the woman behind him. Hatshepsut of the 18th dynasty, which I have told you in Hebrew is transliterated as the David-Moses dynasty. That is the kingdom of David that needs to be restored, that the Jews talk about, that Joseph Smith talks about. And so Horus in the stories is the god of the Egyptians. He's the one who had died and whose temple rituals are based upon his death, resurrection, and ascension into heaven. And the whole temple is based upon Osiris. Osiris is the god who saves people in eternity. This is who we call Jesus Christ in Mormondom. And Horus is the human, the male human, who is born of Amun-Ra. Son Amun is his name. Amun is his father. Amun, son Amun. And so Father Amun at noon is like Osiris. And Horus is the morning sun. Notice the sunstones in the omega shape? Yeah. Joseph Smith was one of those sunstones on the Nauvoo temple. His brother Hiram was on the other. How do I know this? Because it tells us in symbolic form that the Illuminati assassinated Joseph and Hiram in Carthage jail, and then took over their religion, an organization, and fled the country to Mexico territory, where they killed off the Indians to build their own kingdom of Deseret. Exactly. That's why they don't know anything about translation. They were Scottish rites, not York rites. They were influenced by the Illuminati with the inverted pentagram, the light bearer, Venus. Venus is the god. And so, yes, Hatshepsut is what Joseph is claiming is the female pharaoh. And why Egyptologists can't figure this out, and they still have to humiliate Joseph by demonstrating other people's ignorance with their own ignorance. It's just sickening. And so, yes, Joseph flips Ma'at and the prince Horus around. And Horus is the one who restores the kingdom of David. His eyes are restored. He wins the battle against his brother Set. And all this takes place right now. Because the signs in the heaven have occurred, and the Illuminati are murdering everybody. with a coronavirus. Where did a coronavirus occur in the Bible? In those Bible stories? Moses confronting Pharaoh. Coronavirus has killed the firstborn. Metallica calls it creeping death. And so there you have how Joseph Smith did it and how it is to be translated, that this is a prophecy of the latter days, as the Book of Mormon, right in the beginning, gives us John's sign in the heaven of the one like the sun, Sun Amen, Jupiter, who is born of Virgo in the heavens. Don't look at Matthew. Look at Isaiah. I give unto you a sign, not a birth, a sign. And so John the Revelator in Revelation chapter 12, a sign in the heaven, exactly as Isaiah said. Isaiah adds the conception with the birth. In John's chapter 12, you get the understanding that this birth had to have been preceded by a conception. Joseph Smith not his senior actually, in the Book of Mormon, right at the beginning, first chapter, gives us an extra addition to that sign that occurred 23rd September 2017. I saw the heavens open, and I saw God sitting upon his throne. Who is God? He's the father of the Sun Amen, who is Jupiter. Who is the father of Jupiter? Saturn, the fifth of the visible planets. And where was Saturn on that fateful day? At the throne of Ophiuchus. The throne of God is what it's called, symbolically. As Ophiuchus is also the one who battles the serpent. And so, why Mormons won't listen to me? Because I'm not the prophet. When the prophets are silent and they have to get John Gee to bail them out by saying, oh yeah, we don't want to use science. We just want Mormons to have blind faith without works. So yeah, Mormons, screw you. If you're not going to listen to me, the church is going to be destroyed. You know, at least Heber J. Grant had the knowledge to say, you know what? I don't have the key of translation as I claim I do, as Mormons think I do. This R.C. Webb wants to publish a book for me? Great. You'd think Mormons would learn from that. Because John Gee gave up on Mormons. He threw Joseph Smith under the bus. And Egyptologists only know translation. They've never done any actual research. So, yeah. There you go. Who are you going to listen to, Mormons? The ones who don't know, or the one who knows with real evidence and linguistic research science? Dum 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 dum. South Park, if you haven't caught on. South Park did a Joseph Smith episode. There's a Mormon girl who does a commentary of it, and it just passes over her head. She doesn't catch on that that's what he's doing, even after she hears them say, smart, 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 Martin Harris's wife. Just hilarious. So, yeah, I'm the only one who can save the church. Who are you going to follow, Mormons?